They laughed, not the polite kind of laugh, not even the confused kind. No, this was the loud, gut-punching laughter that makes you feel small, ridiculous, and foolish for even dreaming. I still remember standing in the break room of Vortex Dynamics, holding a cup of cheap machine coffee, staring at the group of coworkers who thought my dream was the funniest thing they'd heard all year. "I'm going to start my own business," I had said, voice steady but hopeful. And just like that, the laughter erupted. Mark, the self-proclaimed genius of the office, slapped the table dramatically. "Bro, you can't even manage your inbox. A business? What will you sell? Motivation?" Sienna chimed in, flipping her perfect hair. "If Arlo is starting a business, then I'm becoming a millionaire today." Even Daniel, who I once considered a friend, chuckled quietly. "Don't take it personally, man. It's just, it's not your thing. Not my thing. Dreaming wasn't my thing. Building wasn't my thing. Trying wasn't my thing." Their laughter burned into me like acid. But what hurt the most was my manager, Mr. Roberts, stepping out of his office at the worst possible moment. He overheard everything. He looked me up and down, shook his head, and said, "Arlo, some people are meant to lead. Some are meant to follow. You're better off sticking to what fits you. Don't set yourself up for disappointment." That sentence didn't just hurt. It carved a scar, a reminder, a warning, a spark. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply took a sip of that terrible coffee and said calmly, "You'll see." Their laughter grew louder, but inside me, something shifted, something awakened. 2 months later, fate decided to move things along. We were all called to the conference room for an important announcement. Everyone whispered about promotions, new projects, expansion. Then the CEO walked in with a grim face. "We're shutting down the local branch, effective immediately." Just like that, their faces drained of color. Mark dropped his pen. Sienna started crying. Daniel swore under his breath. Panic spread like wildfire. Everyone who laughed at me, everyone who mocked my dream, everyone who told me I didn't have the potential, was now unemployed. I stood there quietly as they ran through severance details. Meanwhile, I felt strangely calm, not because I had money saved, because I didn't, not because I had a plan, because mine was sketchy at best, but because deep inside, I knew this was my chance. When I packed up my desk, Daniel approached me with teary eyes. "Man, sorry for laughing before. I didn't mean it." I nodded. "It's okay. I didn't take it personally." Oh, I remembered it clearly. The next morning, while they scrambled to edit resumes and apply for jobs they didn't even want, I sat at my small kitchen table with a notebook. At the top of the first page, I wrote, "Bright Nest Digital Solutions." That was the day my business was born. Not in an office, not with investors, not with expensive equipment, just a notebook, a cheap laptop, and a hunger to prove them wrong. My plan was simple: offer digital branding and website cleanup services to small local businesses who didn't have the money for big agencies. But simplicity didn't mean ease. For the first 3 months, nobody hired me. Not a single message, not a single quote accepted. I lived on instant noodles and desperation. My savings dwindled to almost zero. Some nights, I wondered if everyone had been right about me, if maybe I really wasn't built for this. But I refused to quit. I couldn't quit. If I quit, then their laughter would win. One exhausted evening, as I prepared to shut my laptop, a notification popped up. A bakery owner named Luna messaged me. "Hi, someone recommended you. My shop needs a website urgently. Our sales are dropping." I typed back so quickly my fingers hurt. "Yes, I can help." That one small job paid barely $300, but to me, it was everything. I spent 4 sleepless nights designing a clean, colorful website, improving her brand identity, rewriting her product descriptions. 2 weeks later, Luna messaged again. "Arlo, thank you. Our online orders doubled this month." I stared at the message for almost a full minute. My chest felt warm. My throat tightened. Someone believed in me. Someone trusted me. Someone valued my work. Word spread faster than I expected. Other small businesses reached out, friends of Luna, then friends of those friends. Within 6 months, I had 11 clients. Within a year, I had more than 80. I hired 2 part-time assistants, then 4 more. Suddenly, my small apartment couldn't handle my growing team. So I rented a tiny office, one room, two desks, three old computers, and a coffee machine that actually worked better than the one at Vortex Dynamics. Every day, I stepped into that tiny office with a sense of pride I never felt at my old job. I wasn't just working, I was building, and each brick of progress was made from nothing but determination and grit. Then came the moment I didn't expect. One morning, I opened my email and froze. Three familiar names appeared bold and unread in my inbox. Sienna, Daniel, all requesting something, all desperate, all polite in a way they had never been before. Arlo, I heard your company is growing. Are you hiring? Long time. I'd love to work with you. Man, I'm struggling to find a stable job. Do you have an opening? They didn't know how much I had changed. They didn't know how much I remembered. But they were about to find out. Because this story, this rise, this transformation, had only just begun. I woke up the next morning with a kind of excitement I hadn't felt in years. My small workshop, barely 4 tables, a single second-hand computer, and a noisy old fan, was about to become my first real office. Orders weren't flooding in yet, but my online page had started gaining genuine attention. People loved my custom-made wooden organizers, phone stands, and minimalist home accessories. They were simple, clean designs, nothing fancy, but they were mine. And for the first time ever, something in my life felt like it had direction. But while my world was slowly building up, theirs was beginning to crack. I didn't know it yet. I arrived at the workshop early, opened my laptop, and immediately noticed 14 new messages from one of my regular clients, Mr. Patterson. He ran a mid-sized corporate office and ordered my desk organizers in bulk. I clicked the first message and my heart stopped. Their company announced emergency layoffs, financial losses, possible shutdown. My chest tightened. This was their company, the one where the people who mocked me worked, the one whose employees told me I was aimless, casual, not serious, because I wanted to build something of my own. The company that had laughed behind my back every time I shared a dream. I scrolled down and read the last message. We may cancel next month's order due to uncertainty. I'm sorry. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. My workshop suddenly felt too small, too fragile. If Patterson canceled, I'd lose nearly 40% of my monthly income. I had just bought supplies. I had just hired one part-time helper. I had just paid rent for 2 months in advance because I felt hopeful for the first time. And now, my biggest client was slipping through my fingers because their company couldn't keep itself afloat. I stepped outside for fresh air. On the street, puddles from last night's rain shimmered under the early sun. People rushed by, unaware that my tiny world was wobbling. That's when my phone buzzed again. This time, a message from my sister. Did you hear? Their company might shut down. Everyone is panicking. Even they. I didn't have to ask who they meant. The same people who told me I would never succeed. The same people who laughed at me for starting small. The same people who said I'd come crawling back for a job one day. Now they were the ones trembling. Part of me felt bad, truly. Losing a job is terrifying. The uncertainty, the pressure, the shame. I knew that feeling too well, but there was also a quiet part of me that remembered every insult, every moment they disrespected me, when all I wanted was encouragement. Still, I kept my emotions to myself and returned to work. Hours passed, and I threw myself into crafting designs with stubborn focus. Fear pushed me, but so did determination. If my biggest client vanished, I'd just have to find new ones. Orders decreased. I'd create more attractive pieces. If the market shifted, I'd shift with it. I'd been surviving struggle my whole life. This was nothing new, but the world had other plans. Around noon, the door slammed open, and my younger cousin stormed in, panting. "Turn on the news!" he yelled. I grabbed my phone, opened the live stream, and felt my stomach drop. Their company wasn't collapsing. It had collapsed. The CEO appeared on screen, eyes dull, announcing bankruptcy. Their headquarters would shut down immediately. All employees would be released within weeks. A calm silence spread across my workshop. They had mocked me for starting small, and now they had nothing left of their giant corporate building except a logo that would be gone in 2 days. My cousin spoke quietly. They're calling everyone. They don't know what to do. Panic everywhere. I sat down, holding the edge of my table. Not long ago, I felt insignificant. Now the world was shifting in a way none of us expected. I took a deep breath. I didn't wish this on anyone, but I couldn't deny the irony. Life had a strange way of flipping itself when you least expected it. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was him. The loudest, most arrogant guy from the group that made fun of me. The one who once said in front of everyone, "A business? You? You'll quit in 2 months." I stared at his name on the screen, shocked he would ever contact me. Out of curiosity, I answered. His voice trembled. "Listen, bro, do you know anyone hiring? Our company, everything's gone. I don't even know what to do." I closed my eyes for a second. Life could be brutal, but sometimes it delivered justice in ways no human ever could. I didn't mock him. I didn't remind him of his insults. I simply said I would check around. After the call, I sat alone in my workshop, half anxious about losing clients, half stunned by the unfolding collapse. But something else woke inside me, a new fire. This wasn't a setback, this was an opportunity. If a big company could fall overnight, then people would be searching for stability, for new beginnings, for fresh leadership. And my small business, though tiny, was built on honesty, quality, and passion. If I played this right, I could expand. I could hire. I could step into the space they left behind. I opened my notebook and wrote the words that changed everything. If their world collapsed, I'll build mine higher. And with that, I returned to work, unaware that very soon, those same people who laughed at me would walk through my door, desperate, humbled, and begging for a chance, and I would have a decision to make. It was a crisp Thursday morning when the first knock came at my workshop door. I wasn't expecting anyone. My clients had been consistent, but none of them were the type to just drop by unannounced. I was carefully sanding the edges of a new line of minimalist desk organizers when I heard it, a hesitant, almost nervous knock that immediately set my instincts on alert. I wiped my hands on a rag and opened the door slowly. Standing there, shifting from foot to foot, was Daniel. The same Daniel who had laughed the hardest when I first announced I was starting a business. His tailored jacket looked slightly too large, as though he had purchased it in a rush to appear professional. His hair was disheveled, but not in the stylish way I had learned to appreciate from my clients. It was wild, tired, and desperate. "Daniel," I said, letting my voice stay neutral. No anger, no judgment, just a greeting. He cleared his throat, shuffled papers nervously, and finally said, "Hey, heard you were doing well. I, I was wondering if you're hiring." I blinked, processing his words. My heart beat faster, not out of fear, but out of the surreal absurdity of the moment. This was the same person who, not even a year ago, called me a fool for even dreaming. The man who had publicly mocked my ambition was now standing on my doorstep, a job seeker in need. I leaned against the doorframe, trying to gauge him. "Well," I began slowly, "I might be hiring. Can you tell me what you're good at?" He swallowed hard. Office management? Scheduling? Basically anything. I'll do anything." I nodded slowly, observing his demeanor. There was no arrogance, no laughter this time, only humility and a hint of fear. "All right," I said finally. "Come in. Let's talk." He stepped inside, taking in the small workshop. The smell of freshly sanded wood, linseed oil, and coffee permeated the air. My small team, 2 part-time assistants, looked up from their desks. Daniel's gaze shifted nervously between them and me, clearly assessing the new empire I had quietly built. As we sat down, I noticed him fidgeting with the papers in his hands. I waited. Silence can be a powerful thing, and right now, it spoke louder than any words. "Daniel," I said finally, "you do realize how ironic this situation is, don't you?" He blinked, confusion mixing with anxiety. I mean, I guess?" I leaned back in my chair and smiled faintly. "A few months ago, you laughed at me for wanting to start a business. You said I'd fail, that I should stick to my small life. And now here you are, asking for a job while your own company collapses." He winced, clearly uncomfortable. I know what you didn't do," I interrupted gently. "You didn't believe in me, and that's fine. You weren't supposed to, but now." I paused, letting the words sink in. "Now you're at my mercy." His eyes widened. He wasn't used to this role reversal. Not even remotely. I gestured to the desk. "Tell me exactly what you can do for me. Not what your old employer wanted you to do, not what you think you should do. What can you do to help build this company?" He swallowed again. I can manage clients, help organize orders, oversee staff schedules, whatever you need. He paused, looking down at the floor. I just didn't expect this. I didn't expect you to succeed. There it was, the truth spilling out, the same truth I had known all along. People often underestimate those who work quietly, diligently, who build foundations without making noise. And those people, the loudest voices of mockery, are always the first to feel the shock when that foundation becomes unshakable. I leaned forward. Daniel, here's the thing. I don't hire people out of sympathy. I don't reward you for failing. If you work here, it's because you're capable. You'll be expected to pull your weight, follow instructions, and contribute ideas. And yes, I remember what you said about me, but that's irrelevant now. What matters is what you can do, not what you thought of me. He nodded slowly. Relief and guilt mingled on his face. I understand. I'll work as hard as anyone here. I promise. I smiled faintly. Then let's start with something simple. Organize the order list, follow up with clients, and keep track of inventory. If you succeed at that, we'll see where you go from there. And just like that, the first mocker became part of my team. Not as a superior, not as someone to laugh at me, but as an employee, under my guidance, taking direction from someone he once belittled. Over the next week, Daniel worked hard. He stumbled at first, unsure how to navigate my system, hesitant to ask questions for fear of failing again. Gradually, he adapted. I watched him quietly, noticing the shift in his attitude. There was humility now, a kind of respect that comes from recognizing someone else's competence. It was satisfying. Yes, but more than that, it was a lesson. The universe often provides opportunities for justice in subtle, natural ways. My success wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving him wrong for the sake of ego. It was about building something so solid, so functional, and so meaningful that anyone who doubted me could see the results with their own eyes. By the end of the month, the workshop was buzzing. Orders were piling in faster than we could handle, and Daniel was no longer just keeping up, he was excelling. He had begun to understand the mechanics of client management, inventory tracking, and production scheduling. He became a quiet advocate for the small team, smoothing over conflict, helping newer assistants find their rhythm. One evening, as I closed the workshop and walked home, I realized something. The laughter that had once haunted me, the ridicule, the mockery, it was gone. Not because it no longer existed, but because I had grown beyond it. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. The evidence was in front of me, my company, my clients, my team, and yes, even Daniel, who had once mocked me, now contributing to the growth of what I had built from nothing. The real satisfaction came from the knowledge that every step I took, every late night, every sacrifice, every risk, it all counted. And soon, the world would take notice. Because sometimes success isn't about yelling back or exposing hypocrisy. Sometimes it's simply about building something undeniable, something that speaks louder than words ever could. And that was exactly what I was doing. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when the second wave of skeptics appeared. Unlike Daniel, who had arrived timidly and humbled, this group carried the air of arrogance they hadn't yet lost, a residue from the days when they believed they were untouchable. They had all been colleagues and competitors who once mocked my tiny little business, sneered at my handmade product, and predicted I would fail within the first few months. The first of them, a woman named Melissa, had always been particularly sharp with her words. She was the kind of person who would laugh behind your back while smiling in your face, and she had done just that countless times at corporate events, industry meetups, and casual networking parties. I had not seen her since the day she dismissed my business plan as a cute hobby, shaking her perfectly manicured head. That afternoon, I was in the middle of inspecting a batch of custom organizers when my assistant nudged me. "Someone's here to see you, sir. They, seem familiar." I looked up and froze. Melissa was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, the rain dripping from her designer coat. Behind her, a few others had gathered, people who had once whispered, "He'll never make it. He's nothing." Their faces were a mix of disbelief, hesitation, and the faintest glimmer of desperation. Melissa's lips curled into that same patronizing smile she had perfected over the years. "I didn't expect to find you," she said, voice tight with controlled disbelief. "I mean, This place, these products, it's impressive, I guess. I smiled politely. Thank you. And you are? Her eyes narrowed slightly, trying to regain some of the authority she thought she had. Melissa Carter. And these are some former colleagues of yours. We heard about your success and thought we might discuss potential collaboration. I tilted my head, considering her words. Collaboration. Such a polite term for what, in her mind, was probably a desperate plea to ride my coattails. I could feel the tension in the room, the unspoken acknowledgement that the tables had turned. They had laughed, and now they were here, looking for a place at my table. Collaboration is possible, I said slowly. But first, I need to understand your position. I gestured to the chairs around my small conference table. Sit down. Let's talk frankly. They exchanged glances but obeyed, like children reluctantly entering a classroom. As they sat, I noticed their discomfort. Suits slightly rumpled, expensive shoes splattered with mud, hands fidgeting. There was no smugness left, no assumption of superiority. That energy had been replaced by something new, uncertainty. Frankly, I began, when I started this business, none of you believed in me. You laughed at my ideas, mocked my product, and even questioned my sanity for thinking I could make a living from handmade organizers and home accessories. Many of you told me I was wasting my time. Melissa's hand twitched. I raised a finger gently to stop her. No, let me finish. I don't need apologies. I didn't start this business to prove you wrong. I started it because I believed in creating something meaningful. And I worked, night after night, year after year, pouring every ounce of effort into this business, making it real, sustainable, and respected. I leaned forward, locking eyes with each person in turn. And now, here you are. Your companies have downsized, your projects failed, and you are looking for opportunity. You doubted me when I had nothing, and now you're here, hoping to find a way to benefit from what I built. Silence filled the room. You could almost hear the ghost of their laughter echoing in the walls, now replaced by the stark reality of their current situation. I let the pause linger, letting them feel it fully. I'm willing to work with people who are serious, who can contribute, and who are willing to learn. But I am not interested in past grudges or entitlement. Your past attitudes won't earn you a place here. Melissa swallowed, clearly struggling to process the change in dynamics. I understand. We thought maybe there could be an opportunity, mutual benefit. I nodded. Mutual benefit is possible, but it requires respect, hard work, and results, not excuses, not nostalgia for the days when you had the power to belittle others. Result. Over the next hour, I asked each of them detailed questions, their skills, experience, willingness to adapt, and what they could contribute to a company that was already successful but growing rapidly. Some struggled, revealing a lack of practical experience. Others offered vague answers, showing they had relied too long on the safety net of prestige rather than skill. Daniel, who had been observing quietly in the background, gave me a reassuring nod every time someone faltered. He had become a subtle anchor in the workshop, proof that people could change if they embraced humility and hard work. By the end of the meeting, a few of them had quietly asked for the chance to work here, genuinely humbled and willing to earn their place. Melissa lingered longer, her arrogance tempered but not entirely gone. I think I could still contribute, she said, softer now, with a hint of vulnerability. I smiled slightly. Then show me. Prove yourself through results, not words. As they left, I realized the power of that moment. The laughter, the disbelief, the arrogance, they were all gone. The doubters who had once assumed I'd fail were now facing the undeniable reality of my success. They weren't ashamed in the traditional sense. They were aware of their previous misjudgments, and that awareness was enough to humble them. Later that evening, I walked through the workshop, looking at the team. Daniel, my assistant, and I had been planning new product lines, discussing marketing strategies, and managing orders. The energy in the room was electric, filled with focus and determination. I realized something important. Success wasn't about humiliating the people who doubted me. It wasn't about revenge. It was about creating something that outlasted skepticism, something so solid that doubt itself became irrelevant. And now, as I prepared for the integration of some of my former skeptics, I knew the final chapters of this story were about to unfold. They would have to adapt, work hard, and prove themselves, not because they were owed a place, but because the rules had changed. The game was no longer in their favor. I poured a cup of coffee and sat at my desk, looking over the latest order sheet. The rain continued to patter against the windows, a rhythmic reminder that the world moves forward, indifferent to arrogance and entitlement. I smiled faintly, knowing that those who once mocked me were now participants in the reality they had ignored for so long. And soon, they would understand what it truly meant to be part of a company built on dedication, vision, and integrity. The laughter had stopped. The doubters were no longer untouchable, and I was ready for the final step in this journey, the moment when their full realization of my success would be undeniable.